Picture a 54-year-old American walking into work on an ordinary Monday morning. He has spent more than 2 decades building a career, a salary, and a reputation. He still has a mortgage, family bills, and a retirement account that feels nowhere near ready. Then a meeting appears on his calendar with 2 words no worker wants to see: organizational restructuring. By lunchtime, his job is gone. At 28, losing a job can feel like a setback. At 54, it can feel like the floor has disappeared. Because now he faces a question younger workers rarely have to ask. What happens when you are too young to retire, but the job market already thinks you are old? For millions of Gen X workers, that question is becoming impossible to ignore. Generation X was born roughly between 1965 and 1980. In 2026, they are about 46 to 61 years old. They are managers, nurses, engineers, teachers, technicians, drivers, business owners, and office workers. Many are now sitting in the middle of the American workforce. They have experience younger employees have not had time to build. They remember offices before email ruled the day. They adapted to the internet, smartphones, remote work, cloud software, and constant digital change. They worked through the dot-com crash, the Great Recession, a pandemic, and years of rising costs. They were told that experience would make them more valuable over time. For decades, that promise seemed reasonable. Work hard, learn the business, become reliable, and your career should become safer. But something changes when many workers cross the invisible line around age 50. The experience that once made them valuable can suddenly make them look expensive. The seniority that once signaled trust can start to look like a reason to replace them. And that is where the hidden crisis of the Gen X worker begins. Age discrimination rarely arrives with a sign that says, "You are too old." It usually appears in smaller, quieter ways. A promotion goes to someone younger with less experience. A training program suddenly seems designed for everyone except you. A recruiter stops calling after seeing the dates on your resume. A manager starts using words like energy, culture fit, or fresh thinking. None of those words mention age, but workers often understand the message. AARP research found that 64% of workers age 50 and older had seen or experienced age discrimination at work. That is not a small group at the edge of the economy. That is millions of people in the years when their earnings should be strongest. For many Gen X workers, the fear is not that they forgot how to work. The fear is that employers may stop seeing their experience as an asset. A long career can suggest higher pay, higher expectations, and fewer years before retirement. Suddenly, 25 years of experience can be viewed less like a strength and more like a cost. And that creates a painful question. When did experience stop being an advantage? That question becomes much more dangerous when a Gen X worker loses a job. At 30, a career reset can be difficult, but time is still on your side. You may move to another city, learn a new field, or accept a lower salary for a few years. At 55, those choices can carry a very different price. You may have a mortgage that still needs another decade of payments. You may have a child in college or a young adult who still needs help. You may also have parents whose health and care needs are becoming more expensive. And every month without a paycheck is another month when retirement savings stop growing. The real danger is not only getting laid off. It is how long it may take to get back in. An experienced worker can send dozens of applications and still hear almost nothing. Some begin removing graduation dates, trimming old jobs, or shortening their resumes. They are not hiding a lack of experience. They are sometimes hiding just how much experience they have. For Gen X, a layoff can become more than a career interruption. It can threaten the final working years that retirement depends on. So why not simply leave the workforce early? For many Gen X Americans, the answer is brutally simple. They cannot afford to. Bankrate found that 69% of Gen X workers said they were behind where they should be on retirement savings. Transamerica estimated the median household retirement savings among Gen X workers at about $107,000. That may sound like a lot of money until it has to support years, or even decades, without a full paycheck. Retirement is not a single vacation you save for once. It is housing, food, insurance, medicine, transportation, taxes, and everyday life repeated month after month. And the closer retirement gets, the harder it becomes to repair a large savings gap. A worker in their 50s cannot simply rewind 30 years and start investing earlier. That leaves many Gen X workers caught between 2 clocks. The workplace clock is telling them they are getting older. The retirement clock is telling them they still need more time. They cannot comfortably leave, but staying employed can become harder. That is the Gen X trap: too old to start over easily, and too financially exposed to stop working. Then there is another pressure that rarely appears on a resume. Many Gen X workers are caring for two generations at the same time. On one side are aging parents who may need rides, medical help, money, or daily attention. On the other side are children and young adults facing high housing, education, and living costs. Gen X often stands in the middle. That is why they are frequently described as part of the sandwich generation. The pressure is not only financial, it is also measured in hours. Missed sleep, cancelled plans, and constant responsibility. A normal workday may end, but the second shift begins at home. There may be a parent who needs help understanding a medical bill. There may be a daughter who cannot yet afford rent on her own. There may be groceries to buy, appointments to manage, and emergencies no calendar can predict. Meanwhile, the Gen X worker is supposed to keep performing as if none of this exists. They spent years becoming the reliable person for everyone around them. Now many are discovering that being needed by everyone can leave very little room to prepare for themselves. And just as Gen X reached this fragile point, the workplace began changing again. This time, the change has a name everyone recognizes: artificial intelligence. AI is rewriting tasks, hiring processes, office software, customer service, and entire job descriptions. For a generation that started work with fax machines and landlines, this is another major transition. But Gen X has already lived through several technology revolutions. They learned computers after paper files. They learned email after office memos. They learned smartphones, video calls, cloud platforms, and remote work. So the real story is not that Gen X cannot adapt. The deeper fear is whether employers will give them the chance to adapt. AARP found that 34% of older workers considering a job change worried AI could affect their job security. But 74% believed their age itself could be a barrier to getting hired. That comparison reveals something important. Many older workers are not only afraid of being replaced by technology. They are afraid of being replaced by the idea that younger automatically means better. To understand why this moment is so difficult, we have to look beyond the workplace. Gen X entered adulthood while the American retirement system was quietly changing underneath them. Traditional pensions were becoming less common in the private sector. More responsibility was moving toward individual retirement accounts such as the 401k. That sounds normal today, but it was a major shift in who carried the risk. Under a traditional pension, an employer promised a defined retirement benefit. Under a 401k, workers must save, invest, manage risk, and hope the market cooperates. Gen X became one of the first generations to spend most of its career inside that new reality. Transamerica found that half of Gen X workers expected self-funded savings to become their main source of retirement income. Yet only 18% said they were very confident they could fully retire with a comfortable lifestyle. Many entered their peak saving years around the same time America was hit by the Great Recession. Then came a pandemic, inflation, expensive housing, and higher costs across everyday life. This does not mean every General Xer made perfect financial choices, but it does mean their retirement story cannot be explained by personal responsibility alone. The system changed, the risks moved toward the worker, and Gen X had to learn the rules while already playing the game. That is why retirement may look very different for General X. For many, age 65 may not mean the end of work. It may mean a different kind of work. Transamerica found that 56% of Gen X workers plan to continue working in retirement. Some will do that because they enjoy their careers and want to stay active. Others may consult, freelance, drive, sell, teach, or take part-time jobs. But for many households, continued work will also be about money. A smaller paycheck may still be needed to cover basic expenses. Employer health benefits may remain valuable before Medicare eligibility. Extra working years may provide more time to save and delay drawing down retirement accounts. But that plan depends on one thing people cannot fully control. They have to remain healthy enough, employable enough, and wanted enough to keep working. That is the contradiction at the heart of the Gen X worker crisis. Many need to work longer precisely when the labor market may become less welcoming to their age. And the retirement plan increasingly depends on a job they cannot assume will still be there. This story is bigger than one generation. Gen X may simply be the first group to reach the sharpest edge of a much larger American problem. Careers are becoming less predictable while retirement is becoming more dependent on individual savings. People are living longer, but job security does not automatically last longer with them. Technology is moving faster, while families are carrying more responsibility at home. Gen X is standing where all of those pressures meet. What happens to them over the next decade will tell us something important about the future of American work. Because millennials are moving toward the same years of life, and Gen Z will follow after them. Maybe Gen X is not an exception to the new American economy. Maybe Gen X is the warning.